Happy Monday, everybody. As a reminder, do make sure to turn in the argument diagram essay that's due on June 28th. Remember that the article that you need to use to analyze that essay is available on the front page of Canvas, and also if you go to the assignment description for that assignment. So please use that op-ed rather than another op-ed that you find at some point somewhere. So with that being said, let's dive into Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is a good way to think about the ways that you build a case and build arguments. You'll be using this a lot as you work on your argumentative essay later in the course. Just know that as you're gearing up for that and thinking about how arguments work, a lot of the terms and ideas used here come a bit from a speech and debate background. So if you ever did competitive debate, those might be familiar terms to you. I actually coached the team at the University of Utah. I'm one of the debate coaches there. If you're not familiar with some of these terms or debate jargon, that's totally okay. But I think the content in this class is designed to help you get a background regardless of whether or not you compete in debate or have competed in debate. So let's talk about building a case. If you think about building a case, you oftentimes probably think about something like law school or like a case brief or something like that. And when you hear a case brief, that usually means that you have something that has a lot of evidence and supporting material to back up a major point. So when somebody goes to court, right, they bring their brief that indicates why the judge should and the jury should support them on whatever point of view they're trying to advocate for. So the brief is able to provide information that really supports the major claim. That might include statistics, reports, documents, essays, all sorts of things to bring in and support a main point. And similarly, when we talk about a case brief, we mean something similar here, where you use a lot of evidence and supporting details to make a very complex and well-supported argument. So when you think about making a case, you're making a built, largely structured argument in favor of whatever side that you advocate for. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do this. One of the ways that you might hear a lot is a stock issues case. So a stock issues case means that there are various points that you need to make clear when you advocate for a position. So for example, if you're advocating that we need to eliminate semi-automatic guns from being able to be used in the United States, including semi-automatic assault rifles, you might provide a stock issues case. You could demonstrate the inherency. Remember that inherency is the barrier, the thing that's preventing change from happening. So you might cite the way that Congress has failed to act in terms of creating reform to gun policies in the United States. You might suggest that there are harms. So you might suggest that there are, for instance, a greater risk of casualties and problems associated with the usage of assault rifles. You also might demonstrate your plan of attack in order to address that issue. So it might be to eliminate or reinstate the federal assault weapons ban in order to curtail this issue. And then you want to demonstrate solvency. Solvency is the way that you suggest your proposed plan of action would solve the problem. So you might cite the previous success of the federal assault weapons ban in order to support your argument on this case. You want to think about the ultimate purpose. We've talked about this before, but the ultimate purpose needs to be to convince decision makers to take an action you want them to take. So if they're a member of Congress, getting them to vote or pass a piece of legislation. If they're people, getting them to vote or to support whatever policy you're trying to advocate for. There's a lot of different options, but you want to think, what is the person I'm trying to persuade able to do in order to address the issue? And if they're not somebody that can really change the topic, then you need to think about how the ultimate purpose might be reframed to consider their perspective in mind. You want to think about a counter-argument, which of course is an argument that could be raised against your position. Oftentimes, the most strategic cases are the ones that preempt and think about what possible counter-arguments might be. So maybe somebody wants to raise a Second Amendment objection to your reinstatement of the assault weapons ban. You might respond to that counter-argument by indicating the previous success and legality of the federal assault weapons ban in the past, for instance. A proposition, we've talked a lot about propositions in terms of advocating for and showing a structured claim that you're able to support on a particular topic or issue. Another idea is that of incrementalism. So somebody might refute your change that you advocate for in your case by saying, well, no, instead of having an assault weapons ban all at once, we need to incrementally have smaller penalties that we enforce or smaller restrictions over time. Rather than doing the thing all at once, we need to do smaller parts. If you think back and remember the Affordable Care Act, when that was being debated and originally passed in 2010, that was an area of a lot of people who advocated for incrementalism. We don't want this big bill, we want smaller bills to address some of these issues instead. That didn't succeed, but that's an example of the incrementalist approach and argument. You also have presumption. So presumption oftentimes is used to prove something that we already assume to be true. So one way the presumption is important is that we might presume that things as they are right now are okay. That means that the burden of proof falls on the person that's trying to create a change. So the way that things are right now and keeping things the way that they are right now is known as the status quo, the status where things are just how they are. So when you advocate for a change, the burden of proof falls on you to demonstrate why that change is needed. So maybe you say there are instances of gun violence that need to be addressed. Presumption then suggests that there's no ability for you to resolve the problem and then we should just stick with the status quo. So it's your job when you're advocating for a case to show why you will address and create a sort of change that's necessary given the situation. We've talked a lot about facts. So facts are used oftentimes to back up claims, including the use of evidence, statistics, and so on. The burden of rejoinder then means that when you are able to present a case effectively, the burden of rejoinder is the responsibility that the second party has in terms of refuting and responding to your claim. So if you effectively demonstrate that we should pass the federal assault weapons ban, the burden then falls on the person opposing the assault weapons ban in order to demonstrate why we should oppose it and not pass it. So in the same way that innocent until proven guilty, if you do demonstrate guilt, then the burden falls on the other person to prove why that guilt is unwarranted. We talked about probabilities in the past, that is, things we assume to be true or likely to happen, oftentimes based on past events. And we also talked a little bit already about a brief, or a way that you can more structurally put out an argument on a case. You'll be doing some of that work for your actual argumentative essay. The prima facie case is one that follows that structure we mentioned, where there's solvency, inherency, and a plan, as well as harms in order to structure and lay out your case. Problem solution is another structure that you can employ where you demonstrate here are the problems that need to be addressed and here are the ways that my particular proposal will be able to address those issues. So you should think about a lot of the terms here in this chapter as really laying out, putting together a case and putting together the arguments that are able to support and substantiate your major position. So that does it for us for this week. I hope this video is helpful for you, and in the meantime, let me know if you have any questions.